I'm Jeanne Brett. I'm a professor at Northwestern University. I study culture and negotiation strategy with two wonderful colleagues, Brian Gunia, who's a professor at Johns Hopkins, and Brosh Teucher, who's a professor at St. Michael's. We have an article in the Academy of Management Perspectives in which we propose a framework to explain cultural differences in the use and the effectiveness of negotiation strategy. In studying culture negotiation strategy, we came across two puzzles that really challenged us. One of those puzzles was that negotiators in different parts of the world use strategy with different emphasis. If you look at the data, negotiators everywhere in the world, except the West, rely very, very heavily on substantiation and offers. By substantiation, I mean all of the influence strategies trying to get a counterpart to make concessions. And offers can be single-issue offers or multi-issue offers. In contrast, in the West, negotiators rely very principally on information sharing. They're talking about interests and priorities. They ask questions. They reciprocate, asking questions and share answers. So we wondered, why is it that there's this strong difference in emphasis on use of negotiation strategy? We knew from the Western culture research that trust was really important for how negotiators chose strategy. And so we took a look at the World Values Survey trust data. And Brian, I'll ask you to take it from here.
Well, as you can see in the figure, the higher trust cultures, according to the World Values Survey, are the Western cultures and the East Asian cultures. Lower trust cultures tend to be the Latin American countries and South Asia. Trust predicts Q&A strategy in high trust Western cultures like the US, but when you look around the world, it doesn't quite work as a predictor of strategy on its own. There are other fairly high trust cultures, including the East Asian countries I just mentioned, like China, that don't seem to rely on Q&A at all. And there are some lower trust cultures, including Latin American countries like Brazil, that do use at least some Q&A, at least in combination with S&O. So our explanation is that trust isn't enough, that trust actually interacts with cultural tightness-looseness to influence the negotiation strategy that negotiators use. Tightness-looseness refers to the extent to which a culture has strong versus weak social norms governing everyday social interactions, and the extent to which those norms are socially monitored and enforced. Tight cultures have stronger norms and sanctioning systems than loose cultures. As you can see in the slide, the tighter cultures tend to be in the Middle East and East Asia, whereas the looser cultures tend to be Latin American cultures as well as in the West. A look across cultures reveals that it's actually the interaction between cultural tightness, looseness, and trust that can more parsimoniously explain the strategies that negotiators use across cultures.
This is one approach to thinking about why negotiators in different parts of the world use strategy the way they do. But the other puzzle that was bothering us was evidence that East Asian negotiators who we saw were using S&O, substantiation and offers, very, very heavily, were nevertheless negotiating high joint gains. Everyone else in the world, when they use substantiation and offer strategies, and especially in the West when they use substantiation and offer strategies, their joint gains are very low. Joint gains are really the gold standard for negotiation outcomes because they imply that both parties get more of what's more important to them. So we spent some time thinking about why can the East Asians generate joint gains from substantiation and offer strategy. And Brosh, how about telling everyone about our idea?
So we propose that some negotiators, for example, East Asians, are more successful in extracting joint gains from S&O strategy because their culture promotes a holistic thought processing, whereas Western negotiators draw more benefit from Q&A because Western culture promotes more of a linear information processing. And we have quite a bit of evidence about the connection between linear information processing in Western culture in negotiations. We have a little bit less information about S&O. The difference between holistic and linear information processing can be seen in the next slide, in which we have a target object, which is a flower, shown at the bottom. And then we have two choices, group 1 and group 2. The holistic choice will be group 2, whereas the linear choice, or a choice that represents linear thought processing or information processing, will be group 2. The reason is group 2 is emphasizing the dark stem, which is only one item or one feature of the flower, whereas group 1 has a collection of features that, if you consider them jointly, they will represent the flower as a whole. So what we know is that holistic information processors, when they confront contradictions, they try to bridge these contradictions and reconcile these differences, whereas linear information processing individuals would choose one perspective over another. Another difference is that holistic information processors, or people who come from a culture that promotes holistic information processing, would look at the connection between items and elements and take the whole of the information and consider it when making a decision, whereas the linear decision makers or information processors would follow the elements sequentially, one item at a time, rather than looking at the entire set of relationships. Given that, we think that Eastern Asians who draw on holistic information processing are able to extract information from S&O because they're able to piece together all the bits and pieces of information represented in these exchanges of offers and substantiation. Back to you, Jeanne.
Thank you. So we did a lot of reviewing of research to put this paper together. We think that in the process of identifying these two potential explanations for cultural differences in the use and effectiveness of negotiation strategy, we kind of generated more issues for research than we resolved. So we hope that our paper in the Academy of Management Perspectives will motivate, challenge, inspire you to get into this field of research and make some progress that contributes to both theory and practice.